We're back with Dr. Deepa Verma to talk about what hormones impact weight loss, how stress can wreak havoc on your body, and practical ways to keep your hormones in check. So Dr. Verma, what are the major hormones that play a role in weight loss and fat loss?
So there are several. So we have to first think of hormones as kind of like a symphony, a concert.
Okay.
So they have to work together, because if you're listening to a concert and someone is a little out of chord or out of tune, the dissonance is there, right? You're gonna know it and everything's gonna go kind of out of whack. Mm-hmm. All the hormones, there are several cascades of it too. So we have the primary targets, the secondary targets. We usually start producing things in our brain. Mm-hmm. There's the HPA axis. So we have the hypothalamus, we have the pituitary. Those are kind of like the pre-hormones.
Okay.
And then we have the secondary places where now the hormones will be secreted.
Okay.
So they get triggered by what comes from the brain. So we have the thyroid. Okay, thyroid is a big hormone. Mm-hmm. We have in women the ovaries, which will help produce the estrogen, right? Then we have progesterone. In men, the testes, which is testosterone. Mm-hmm. We have insulin. Then we have cortisol from the adrenal glands. Insulin comes from the pancreas. We have leptin and ghrelin. Leptin come from fat cells. Ghrelin is in the stomach. Then we have all these neuropeptides, CCK, from all the other organs in the body. All these work together. So when we talk about hormone imbalance, we're just not looking at one or two things. What is the root cause? What is happening? You just don't have low testosterone for no reason.
Right.
There's usually an issue is probably excess weight. Mm-hmm. These hormones like to go and get gobbled up by the fat. Okay. And that can drop the hormones. Okay. So those are the big players, really.
Okay, gotcha. Let's go back to, let's say, cortisol.
Yes.
From my experience, at least, this is kind of like the Jekyll and Hyde hormone.
Yes, it is.
Right?
It's two-faced, sort of. Because it's good, but it's bad. And
so kind of go into how that, again, creates that cascade, or how it's it falls into that.
So cortisol is from the adrenal glands. The adrenal is very vital in producing things like the sex hormones, the cortisol, the mineral corticoids. Cortisol is actually a steroid, right? Cortisone. Okay. So too much of it, if you take prednisone or long-term steroids, you can tend to swell up, retain water. It can lead to osteoporosis, diabetes. This is what's happening now when people have elevated cortisol. It's a stress hormone. Okay, it's supposed to be released highest in the morning time.
Yes. And
then lowest at nighttime. That's what allows us to go to sleep. Most people, unfortunately, these days are complaining of being wired but tired, right? They have racing thoughts, they're anxious, they can't get to sleep because their cortisol is elevated at nighttime. This is what stress does. It causes a persistent elevation. This is where we talk about adrenal fatigue, then consequently adrenal burnout, where it's just like, I can't do it anymore. So let me just say one thing. Any hormone that we talk about now, too high or too low are going to cause problems. So don't just think it's an excess or a deficiency of something. If it's not balanced, it's going to create issues.
Gotcha.
So it all has to work, like I said, as a symphony. It has to work together.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, cortisol in essence affects the thyroid. Or how does that relate to, let's say, metabolic health?
Metabolic health. Yes. So when you have excess cortisol because you just have ongoing stress, you're going to have weight gain. You get that midlife crisis where people get what we call the muffin tops, right? You get the abdominal obesity, right?
Yes.
One of the biggest complaints I hear from my patients, male or female, I'm just getting so much weight. Now, for women especially, when we are going through puberty and stuff like that, we secrete a lot of estrogen and we get ready to increase our fat stores because biologically, we bear children, right? So it prepares our body to get pregnant down the road. And the people who might have pear shape, the hips might start getting wide. But midlife for men and women is now the central obesity, right? So men are usually typically, if you have a good body structure, broader on the top. Women might have the nice curves.
Sure.
But men and women later on in life, it's all the essential obesity. This is what cortisol does. This is why being overweight has an effect on all the hormones.
So this is like that apple shape, kind of like holding everything right in your midsection.
Yes, just wider kind of.
Yeah. So that can be not solely attributed to, but a big chunk of that is attributed to stress.
Absolutely. Again, the hormones are all going to go out of whack when we have a lot of stress.
Okay.
Because we can't measure stress, but we can measure the hormones.
Okay. So in essence, stress is affecting our hormones.
Right.
And essentially we want to keep that in balance. So that the orchestra and the synergy, the name of your location, that is absolutely right. Okay, so now, just like everyone does, we age. Correct. How does aging affect the change in hormones?
So when we're younger, we have spurts, you know, of hormone release, right? We go through growth spurts. We have a lot of even growth hormone. You know, when we talk about like the teenage years, you might talk about acne and things like that. That's because we're releasing a lot of, you know, especially in boys, a lot of testosterone. That's what helps us mature. That's what grows the sex organs, right? Internally and externally. And that's what makes us mature. Deepens the voice, you know, just the whole body changes. For women, you know, getting their periods, you know, facial hair for men.
Right.
So we have a lot of it. But what happens is biologic aging, there's biologic and there's chronologic aging. So we can't change the biologic aging part because that's just what's happening inside the body. That's never going to change. We can slow down the aging process by lifestyle. That's a whole different thing. So we start dropping our hormones, okay? So what we had at age 20 is going to differ at age 40, at age 60. This is what we call the peri, postmenopause in women. Men go through it too. You guys aren't immune from that. It's harder, I think, for men because men don't really like to talk about it until it's too late, unfortunately. You know, maybe it's a machismo thing or something like that, but men typically don't like to complain. That's fine. Women, we don't complain, but you know, we're so used to nurturing and taking care. I have to say a lot of women also put themselves last because they're caring for their family, their husbands, their children, you know, parents. But men go through menopause or andropause.
What is that? Let's talk about that.
Okay, let's talk about the hormones first. We need cholesterol. Cholesterol is really what we need. Cholesterol is not all bad. Okay, we actually manufacture our own cholesterol. We have HDL, LDL, but we have to have good proportions of the good to the bad. Then we talk about particle size. That is really how we produce our hormones and what gives cell membrane integrity. We need cholesterol, okay? But not the bad stuff, not fast foods, trans fatty acids.
The good, so the good stuff would come
unsaturated fats, plants, things like avocados, nuts, olive oil. We talk about omegas, you know.
Unsaturated.
Poly or monounsaturated. Anything that's saturated is bad, okay? That's meat, dairy, even vegetable oils. There's certain things that they have.
Got it.
So what happens is after cholesterol, we produce pregnenolone. That's the mother hormone. That is called the mother hormone.
Okay.
That goes and produces DHEA.
Okay. What is this DHEA?
It comes from the adrenal glands.
Okay. And what does it do for us?
So it gives us energy. It helps with the sex hormone production. Okay. This is now going to go and produce testosterone. And men, they have much more testosterone, of course, than women do. But you know what's unique? What's really interesting is we actually have the same kind of hormonal pathways. It's just that men have much more testosterone. It's like 600 to 1,000 is normal level of testosterone, right? And everyone's different. That's why I have to always give a range. In women, we have testosterone, but maybe like 40 to 100 is normal. So they can have almost 10 times the amount that we do because we also have estrogen and progesterone, right? Now the testosterone goes and creates estrogen. Men have estrogen too.
Right.
So, you know, when we talk about maybe bodybuilders or fitness people who are just doing unopposed testosterone, they might run into some issues where they get, maybe you've heard of like man boobs, you know, the extra gynecomastia, shrinkage of the testicles. So there has to be against balance. But we shunt a little more towards the estrogens. There are 3 types of estrogens: estradiol, estriol, and estrone. Estrone is not the best type of estrogen, and it does increase as we grow older. So you need a mid 30s and after, that's when our hormones start changing. Okay,
and so how can we create awareness around understanding if our hormones are in check, if we are in balance? What are things that we can do to create awareness around that? Are there tests? Are there...
Absolutely.
Yeah, what kind of tests?
Hormone tests.
Okay.
I mean, I do everything from cortisol tests. It has to be done the right way. These are really specialized tests. You really shouldn't do serum or blood testing for cortisol like a one-time. I do a 4-point saliva test for that.
Okay.
There are, you know, urine, saliva, blood tests that you can do for hormones. There's a lot of literature out there. This is really what you should leave to the practitioner or physician to decide.
Yes.
Because sometimes people will say, well, I did the urine test, but I'm still feeling off. Like, it's the way we interpret it, right? So there's definitely lab testing for that. But the first and foremost thing is listen to your body. You know how we often say like, oh, I'll never fit into those jeans I wore in college. Well, I'm actually the same size I was in high school, and I've had 3 kids. And what I was aware of as I went through that process, I've been pregnant 5 times, you know, I've breastfed my kids, and my body hasn't changed much. You know, maybe I developed a little more curves and stuff, but I was aware of what my body should be. I didn't say to myself, I didn't have a sense of complacency where I said, you know, okay, this is what's supposed to happen. It's supposed to happen. This is what happens to people is when they're aging. They're like, oh, it's just normal. I'm waking up with arthritis because I'm getting older. You can be 95 and feel amazing. Listen to your body. Report any changes to your physician. Don't be scared. Don't feel like you're complaining. If your hair is thinning, if you're getting dry skin, that's not how it was when you were in your 20s. The problem is we're so resilient when we're younger, and then we start hitting our 30s and our 40s. By the way, 40s is supposed to be the best decade of a woman's life. Emotionally, sexually, everything like that, because our hormones are at their peak just before we're going to drop it and go into menopause. And some women breeze through menopause.
Yeah.
It's not a negative thing. You know, many other countries, they don't even have a word for hot flash. So, especially in Japan, you know, and we can talk about diet and things like that.
Sure.
But in America, we look at menopause and that midlife crisis as such a negative thing.
They do.
To me, it's a beautiful thing that we age.
It's really taboo here. Like, it's really,
like, oh, I'm going to become like, you know, a monster. I'm going to get angry. I'm going to be irritable in my sleep. If you have that type of foresight about it, then it's probably going to be that way.
Sure.
But I've met so many women who were just so aware of themselves and ate well and they exercised. They said menopause was a breeze. And you can look at them and their skin is beautiful. They look radiant. I can look at a person when I first see them and really I can interpret what's going on in their life. Sometimes it's really written on your face.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's taking those 4 pillars that you practice throughout your entire life. Just
you know, teaching kids. We don't often, you know, teaching kids yoga is amazing. I tell my boys, you know, when they're with me, I said, you need to work out with mom. Like, they watch me and then it becomes like a challenge. And like, oh, how many, you know, sit-ups can I do? How many push-ups can I do? And they, oh, mommy, I can do more than you. You know, I'm like, I know one day they're gonna be much stronger than me. But at this point, it's cute. Like when I'm doing my, you know, 25, 30, like weight dumbbells, like to them, it's like, oh wow, like, you know.
It's fun.
Instill it at a young age. And create that awareness. That way when we age, we're aware, and then, you know, encourage people to go to the doctor at least once a year. I think people wait too long to do that because, like I said, we're so resilient in our first 2 or 3 decades of life. Nobody gets blood work.
That's one of the first things that I ask. I'm like, when is the last time that you had blood work done? And they're like, like 3 years ago, I'm fine. Are you kidding me? Your hormones change all the time. Your diet really depicts like how you're doing internally too. So how can you tell me and sit there that you haven't had blood work done?
See, that's the big problem, is because you feel well until you hit this wall, right? And that's what I have to tell people is, even when you're feeling well, there are changes going on in the body. For example, let's talk about cancer for a second, right? All of a sudden, it's this diagnosis you get one day, right? It's this unfortunate diagnosis, which it is. But that cancer has been growing for decades. So what happened? Maybe you had a cold, right? You started coughing and you couldn't stop coughing. You went to the doctor, they ordered a chest x-ray. There's that lung tumor there. That did not appear overnight or in a week. That's been there for years and decades. So if you can, this is what we call preventative medicine. This is the type of medicine, even though I'm a traditional MD, is that I do as an integrative, functional, anti-aging doctor, is do stuff when you're feeling well, because we want to optimally age, right? I know I say I'm an anti-aging MD because that's just the more accepted term, but it's optimally aging, right? We want to embrace aging.
Absolutely. So let's tackle if you find that your hormones are imbalanced. And going back to one of your pillars, exercise. What are things that, you know, people can do to help keep that imbalance?
Just learn about the hormones first. So cortisol is an insulin. Insulin, we talk a lot about insulin resistance. It's released from the pancreas and it encourages us to store fat. We don't want to have an excess insulin. So what happens is, it's not just about sugar, it's about fat. We talk about saturated fats. When we have a very high fat diet or our cholesterol is too high, it actually blocks the cells to uptake the sugar. Then what happens is, now we have excess glucose floating around the blood, and that signals the body to produce more insulin. Then our insulin raises. So I'm always big on testing the hemoglobin A1C and the insulin. That's one. Cortisol we talked about. Leptin and ghrelin, these are our hunger and satiety hormones. So we have leptin, which is our satiety hormone. So typically it should be low, right? Because that prevents us from basically kind of like, you know, it's how full we feel. We don't want to overeat. But then if it prevents us from overeating, you would think a lot of leptin is good, right? But why do obese people have a lot of leptin? Because they're resistant now. The body's like, oh my gosh, I'm just going to put more and more out because the body's not responding to it. That's what happens with the thyroid. The TSH from the brain will be increased because the brain keeps putting it out because the thyroid is not responding. So we have to think about the secondary pathways. Ghrelin, the same thing. What happens is, that's the hunger hormone. What happens in obesity is it doesn't drop enough and it stays elevated, so it makes them want to overeat. these are genetic things. So I always tell people, don't feel bad,
Yeah.
you know, and there's no cookie cutter diet.
Yeah.
Right? There's so many.
I think I've had a little run-in with the ghrelin hormone. I think if you're a serial dieter, doesn't this
Yes.
impact?
Yeah, because your body's confused now. Doing these yo-yo dieting, no. Dieting is not a thing you need to just do every once in a while. It is a lifestyle. It is nutrition.
Yes.
That's why I'm saying eating clean. It is not like, oh, I'm around the holidays. I always hear that. Oh, it's the holidays. And then awesome that people come in and do their detox and all that stuff.
Sure.
But what's going to happen for the rest of your year? And then New Year's resolutions. We're in January now. Happy New Year. But what happens after a month or two?
Yeah.
You see a sharp decline in people really, you know, taking care of themselves and wanting to continue to eat well.
You're right.
I teach people that it's not an effort. Once they keep doing it, it becomes a habit. The habit becomes discipline, and then the discipline is what you carry throughout life. What I do every morning is the same thing I've been doing for the past several years. I wake up, I do my warm lemon water with baking soda. I've never had a cup of coffee in my life. That leads to adrenal
That's an incredible woman right there. Okay.
I don't know. I've never had a cup of coffee.
Wow.
I mean, I've had like a coffee flavored something, but
Sure.
the reason why my adrenals are so intact is because I've never, you know, that it's not about just the caffeine, it's the adrenaline, which is, you know, we talk about that, the neurotransmitters and the adaptogens and all those things that the brain has to communicate to the rest of the body. So I do that, then I go and work out. I make myself a huge plant-based smoothie, which is my breakfast. Then we can talk about intermittent fasting, you know, which I do during the day, and then I like to have a light dinner. And the problem is we eat so much so late, and then what do? We kind of wind down for the night, we become sedentary, we sit, we lay back, then we have a host of other problems, reflux, all that stuff.
Yeah.
The answer is not, and this is what I had to do as a traditional MD, it is not giving a prescription for an acid blocker or Nexium. Let's stop and think, what is causing your reflux? If someone is sitting there with a very big belly, when you're pregnant, women are pregnant, you have a big belly, they tend to get reflux. Same concept. What we're seeing now is this, everybody, men especially, right?
Where your hands rest.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So what's pushing up? Alcohol consumption, food, are you eating like the greasy foods, soda, coffee, things that are acidic. So we talk about becoming more alkaline, right? Inflammation and cancer and disease cannot thrive in alkalinity. Now, the whole alkaline thing can be confusing for people because we're not changing the whole pH of the body. It's in the cellular aspect.
Okay. So at the end of the day, food, not a diet, team no diets, okay? It has to be sustainable, right? And then again, going back to exercise, something that's manageable and listening to your body.
So I talk about intuitive eating and intuitive exercise. I post a lot on Instagram and Facebook, and I do these little tidbits, and I really make it a point you have to listen to your body. Like you said, it's not one size fits all. There's no cookie cutter diet. So going to the physician, getting genetic testing, seeing what's right for you, having a personal trainer guide you, seeing results, and then that will keep you going.
Absolutely.
Right? And don't fall off. You got to stay on the straight and narrow path.
Yeah, well, falling off is a part of the plan, you know, it's a part of the progression,
of the process, but get back on.
Absolutely, that's all.
That's what I mean.
That's it.
That you can't, don't be hard. Another thing is, I know I'm saying all this stuff, but don't be hard on yourself. You have to we're human, right? If you want to cheat, but that's what discipline gets us back in check. Like, of course we want a vacation, we have the holidays, we like to spend time with family and go to parties and dinners. But allow yourself that leeway, but get back on track. And what I do when I go out to eat, like tonight I'm planning to go out, you know, and go, you know, maybe have a nice few drinks or something like that. But that's the only thing I allow myself to do that I consider as a little maybe going off the track for myself. But I detox while I'm doing that. I take digestive enzymes. I take supplements that might. And my rule is if I drink alcohol, I drink clean, organic, gluten-free vodka.
Quality. It's still quality.
I don't use sugar. I don't use cream. I put apple cider vinegar.
Yeah.
I love Saint Germain and a little like lemon in there, and that's my drink. And I know when to cut it off. Yeah. And there's supplements I take that can help metabolize it, so you never have a hangover. Yeah. You know,
you've created awareness around everything, and you practice a beautiful balance.
That's it. It's awareness. It's balance. Those are the key words for today, folks.
Absolutely. Check.
Yes.